Hello, Lauren here with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art, and I'm on day 217 of my 365 days of color. And in this tutorial, we'll be finishing Lois the Beagle's painting. This is part 2. Part 1 is linked below if you missed it. Alright guys, let's get painting. Alright, so next we're going to work on the darkest values in the fur. And for that, I'm going to use a filbert brush. I'll do some mixing with my filbert brush, and I think I'll also do some applying. So I'm going to use burnt umber with a little bit of black. You know, I'll even pull in some burnt sienna in there too, because we definitely have a tint of red in there as well. All right, so let's start working on that left ear. Now I'm going to lift up the top left of this ear over top our dark green background. We just see that there's a little bit of fur and the fold of the ear there. I'm also going to work this along that fold. There's a shadow being created from there, and moving up this little indent above the eye. I'll just fill in this area almost with like a dry brush. I'm not adding in more paint. It's just kind of leaving a lighter brown there because I'm barely pushing much paint around. And then I'll also, because that fold is much lighter than this brown, so I won't paint that area, but I will right here on the tail. And actually now I'm going to bring in some black into that because I want to get, it should be much darker here, this line that comes down. Now if you look closely around Lois's eyes, to the left of the left eye it kind of comes in, and the same on the outer side of the right eye. So I'll move in towards that left eye, but not all the way to the end of that eye. It just leaves this tiny white gap. And then I'll work up between the head and the ear. Now I'll work this color into the top of the left ear and at the very bottom too. Okay, for that right ear, we're going to use the same colors, but a little bit lighter. So into that first color we made, I'm just going to add a little bit of raw sienna. Now I'm going to pull it aside into a separate color mixture because I want to keep that original dark brown. Let's test it out. You know what, that's actually a little too light, so let's start with the original. We can still use the one we just mixed up, that third color. And we'll work from bottom up on the right ear. Now that lighter brown that we just mixed up, we're going to use that as we move up the ear. So this is the color for the bottom of it, and then we'll blend in that lighter brown and then get even lighter by adding in more raw sienna. And do you notice it starts to get slightly lighter as we move up? Well, that's when we're going to start to add that lighter brown that we just made. In a little bit, I'm going to pull in even more raw sienna into this next brown. It's like we're going slowly, very slowly, from our dark brown to a light brown. And I'm also going to take it out a little bit further into the background. I'm just going to have it come down, curve out a little bit further into the green background. And this is actually going to be, we'll cover it up with a lighter color, but I did cut off a lot of the puppy's head with the green. So just to get that nice angle, I'm using this brown just to help me, just be a guideline for me for when we add the lighter browns over top here. But I'm not going to move to that area yet. I actually want to go back to that real dark we made where we had the burnt umber and black, and I want to get that at the bottom of the ear. So if your paint underneath is a little dry, you can always pull in into this color as you work up. Because the top of this ear is lighter, you can always pull in a little bit of raw sienna to help you blend those two areas together. So now let's work on the dark to medium areas right on this side. We're going to leave the gray and white areas till after we've applied the browns and the light tans. Okay, so for that, I'm going to mix up my burnt sienna, raw sienna, still using my size 2 filbert brush. And let's test that out. Okay, so I think that works. Now I just want to note here, we're going to be doing quite a lot of blending on the face, and which requires us to work wet into wet. So I recommend actually, if you already haven't, pause and look ahead a few steps so you can kind of see what colors and where I'm blending, and that way you're more prepared and you know how fast to work so that your colors don't dry. So I'll work this color all the way up below the left eye, and then I'll move on to the left ear. We have more white to fill there. And then I'll also apply this to the bottom of this left ear on that fold. Okay, so now we have some dark areas to move back to. We're going to move back to our real darks because we have like indents and shadows that we need to get around the eyes. All right, so we're gonna pause, and I'm gonna move to my size 1 round brush, and I'm gonna mix up my burnt umber with a bit of black. Again, that's burnt umber with a little bit of black. Okay, so with my size 1 round brush, beagles have this beautiful outline around their eyes. Like we already did outline the eye, but it's even thicker and darker. I wouldn't say darker, just more brown. Now I'm applying the same amount of pressure, pushing down on my size 1 round brush as I move around the eye, and it's the perfect width for this border. And this will go all the way up to that line, our sketch line that goes right here. Because there was that line we did on both sides of the eyes on the inside. That's where I'm going to bring that to. And we also have a line, a fold right here. Now if you notice, I'm not filling in the entire lower part of the face. I'm trying to define that cheekbone, and it kind of goes up at an angle, almost looking like a triangle right below that left eye, so that we still have a little bit of that lighter brown to the left of it, and I'm just very carefully blending it into that first layer brown. And I'm going to go back to that dark brown we were just using, because I see more of a line right there. Goes up along the inside of that eye and down along the left side of the snout. And you know where else I see it? I see this very dark brown on the forehead, the very top of the head, not the forehead, but the very top. And it even creates this little indent on the top of the head. It goes down and back up again. All right, so great. We made this raw sienna and burnt sienna mixture, and into that I'm going to add more raw sienna. If you need to mix it up again, just mix up burnt sienna and raw sienna, but add more raw sienna this time. And let's test this out. We don't want to make this too light. I think this is good. In fact, this goes up the head, and what I'm going to do, my hand is doing this. These little dots, that's my hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take more of that burnt sienna or that burnt umber and black, and I'm just going to blend that in because it's just not getting much light right at the very top of that fold. Okay, so now let's continue working with that color. I'm going to work above the head right here. We have the little bit of white to fill in. I also want to get right above that dark brown outline we just created, in between that little brow mark, that little indent. I guess fold in the fur. That's what it is. It's a fold in the fur right here, which I might have to touch up because I kind of painted over it. I'm going to bring it down along. So here, this is the white marking, but I have just a little bit of this brown that I can paint right here. And now is where we're going to mix up, oh, it's almost dry, my yellow ochre and my raw sienna. We're getting just a little bit lighter. See how we just slowly getting lighter? And I'll paint this area in, blending that in. All right, so I really like that side of the face. I think I'm going to do the same thing, working from the dark to light on the right side of the face. We want to start with creating that line like we did on this side over here. I'm going to mix up my burnt umber with black. No, I said burnt umber. Yep, I said burnt umber. Burnt umber with black. I was grabbing some of the burnt sienna. Okay, and very carefully, this is actually going to climb very thin line right on this fur right here, which we'll paint in later, and climb up the side of the ear, inside. And if you watch me, it goes in towards the eye, like here goes in. We're going to do the same thing right around there, where it goes in and then comes down again. I might have made that go in a little too far. We'll figure that out with our layers. And then I'll just have it stop at the top of the head like that. All right, so unlike this side, our darker areas are right here and on the forehead right here. So for that, I'm going to mix up my raw sienna, a little bit of burnt sienna, just a very little bit, and let's try that. I had to remix this color because I added too much of the burnt sienna. So make sure you only add just a pinhead size amount of burnt sienna to a good amount of raw sienna. Okay, and we don't want to fill in the entire area, just right on the inside of the eye, on the right side. And I'll also start applying this right here on the head. You know what, it's a bit darker there, isn't it? So let's mix up some burnt sienna, more this time than raw sienna, okay? So more burnt sienna than raw sienna. And that's what we'll use to fill in this area to the left of that black line. Okay, so we got that darker. I'm even going to pull in just burnt umber and go up that line with just burnt umber. Just like this side, it's kind of got an indent there, and we'll do that on that side. I'll also do some burnt umber on the top of the head going down. All right, so I can probably move to my filbert brush again because we're going to paint the same color right here and here. And for that, we'll use lots of yellow ochre with a little bit of raw sienna and some white. So lots of yellow ochre, a little bit of raw sienna, and white. All right, let's test it out. Okay, I think that's great. Oh, guess what we forgot? You know what? I think we can manage it. We forgot that dark brown outline around the eye, but I don't think it's gonna mean it won't matter. We can just layer that over top. And to sort of counteract this big side of the cheek, it almost looks like it's swollen, I'm just gonna lift this part up a little bit more with my size 2 filbert brush so that comes out further. And then I'll move to my size 1 round brush just to get into these smaller areas down here. And we're going to be doing some blending right here, because right where it meets here, this fold, this is going to create a little bit of a shadow there. So I'll just pull in some of my burnt umber, just a tiny bit, blend that in right there, and then go back to that color to fill in the area around the smile, just on that side. I'll show you what I mean. Right here. Now it's really important here that between colors that you wash out your brush thoroughly so that you're not getting that burnt umber mixing with the yellow ochre for right here around the smile. And I'm even going to pull in a little bit more burnt umber. Now I know this looks so funny right now, but I think it'll make the world of a difference when we add that dark brown outline. So size 1 round brush is what I'll use for that, with burnt umber and black. Same colors as before, but a little less black. And if you notice, it kind of goes out because he's kind of like, his eyes like turned, and then it gets real thin right here. So I'm going to use the tip of my brush, and then it gets thick again at the bottom. I'm going to even take it out a little bit more on the left of the right eye. See, doesn't that look so much better? And what else we can do to make that a little bit less swollen looking is bringing this part of the fold inwards a little, and then this down. So let's just do that right now. The color that we'll use for this part of the ear is the same color that we mixed up for the light part of the face. So let's do it again. That's raw sienna, yellow ochre, and white. That's the same color. So if you watch me, what I'll do is I'll just bring it in where we have that black, just bring it down ever so closely without going over that entire black line right here. All right, so I'm going to stop it there because it starts to get darker along that fold. All right, so you can see I didn't fill in that entire area because what I'll do is just pick up some raw sienna and blend that into the bottom where it's getting a little bit less light because of the fold. I'll just blend that in, wet into wet. My brush has hardly any paint on it, just a little bit, and I'll pull it into the top, blending it in just like I did down there. And what the heck, I think this needs just a little bit more light on it, so I'm going to put just raw sienna right there. All right, so now with just black, let's tone down the side of this cheek. I'll even add just black to this line. Ta-da! See, look how much better that improved it. Now, if you notice on the edge of this ear, we have like a little bit of a line that's like the color of that fold. So I'll take that same color. Oop, too big of a brush. Well, I'll keep it to pull in. Let's pull in some raw sienna into that color we just painted for this fold and that side of the face. And I'm going to use my size 0 liner brush. And we just darkened it up with a bit more raw sienna. I'm going to apply this to the outer edge of the ear. I'm even going to have some on the top. I see a little bit of lightness on the top of this ear. Here's the fold and here's the top of the ear. I'll just pull some of this lightness down. Now I just noticed something. You see how here we have this tan fur wrapped around the right edge of the smile? Well, we also have some of these browns wrapped around this part of the smile. So we gotta mix it up. So we use burnt sienna and burnt umber over there. So that's what I'll do. I'll mix up burnt sienna, tiny bit of burnt umber. Okay, and with my size 1 round brush, I'll paint that around the edge of that smile. You know, that's a little too dark, so let's just pull in raw sienna into that and blend that in. Just goes up a little bit like that to the side. And with that, this part of the ear should not be lighter than that. So let's just pull in some more burnt umber right in that corner, right above that smile. And I'm just blending it, a little bit of burnt umber into that. And then I'll even add a little bit more just right there. Okay, so I blended it up and then I put a little bit more right there, the darkest point, above that smile. You know, we're still not done the brown. We only have one more spot of brown that we need to paint in. And that's right here, kind of goes up the side of the leg, or the front leg. And I'll mix up some raw sienna with a little bit of burnt sienna. So that's raw sienna with burnt sienna. Okay, let's just fill that entire part in. We're gonna go over some of our green background as we work up the side of the body. I'll even pull in a little bit more burnt sienna right here. I see it's darker. Oh, I didn't light my candle. Silly mama, silly me. Now here's the thing. What I just realized, we can't actually put this fur down yet because we still have the duckies to paint in. So I'll paint in those duckies and then we can start working on the gray fur. All right, so these duckies are a lot easier than you think. I promise they are tiny, but they're gonna be so much fun and a lot more straightforward than you think. I'm gonna mix up cadmium yellow with lots of white. That's cadmium yellow with white, and can't forget yellow ochre. Cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, and white. I'm running out of room on my paint pad. We just mixed up so many colors. Okay, mix up a good amount because we'll add quite a few duckies. But we have one more color to mix up, and that's orange. And you really don't need much permanent red here, just a little pinhead size amount of red. Mix it in with yellow, cadmium yellow, and there's gonna be the beak color. Okay, so we'll move to paint these little duckies. I'm using a size 0 liner brush. And for the duckies, I'll just show you how it works. You first create, I'm gonna start right here because I'm gonna have them all over. I won't have the full body of all of them, but for this one, I'll make the full body. So I'll just do a circle for the body of the duck. I'll do another circle for the head to the left of that. And then a little curl for the tail. And I'll just do those little bodies all around, and then we'll add the orange beak and then the little dot for the eyeball. And what I mean by this will be a full body because you can see the full thing, but in other parts we'll just see part of the tail because it'll be going off the edge of the bow tie. It won't be visible because of all the folds and stuff. And I'm also going to paint over the knot. So right here I'm painting a little tail. And right above it I'll just create the body. The head's kind of cut off, it's kind of behind that fur. Hey, and you don't even have to add little ducks here. You can add anything you want, stars or polka dots, rainbows, whatever you decide. So I'm able to squeeze in a full body duck here. I'm trying to make them about the same size. See, it starts to get real hard to push the paint around, so that's when I need to wash out my brush completely so it's just clean and damp. I'm going to pull off the dripping water because I really don't want it to drip into my painting. I have to do that a lot with my detail brushes. And then I'll just paint the body. And now, so I have a clean damp brush, I'm going to go in with my orange, and just to the left of that head, because I'm going to make them all facing this direction, I'm going to just make a tiny little triangle, little for the little beak, only on the full body ducks, the ones that you can actually see the beak. And to finish those ducks off, I would just take black on the tip of my brush and just do little eyes. Ooh, you need just the smallest little brush, smallest little amount of black. Ooh, I'm not happy with that brush. I'm going to move to a different one for those eyes. I'm going to move to a size 4-0 spot brush. There we go. That's with the 4-0 spot brush. I'll even use this brush to add I think maybe one more duck. put like a little head right there. And then I'll go in with orange for the beak, and then black for that eye. I need to make some more room on my paint palette, so I pulled up my paper towel, and we're gonna make a few shades of our gray so that we can start adding those. It's gonna be a real dark gray, a medium gray actually. We don't wanna go too dark or else it's gonna look like almost a gray dog. So we need to make a medium gray for the dark values on the white, and then get to the point where we're using straight white on the right side. All right, so I'll just grab a random brush. This is my size 8 cat's tongue brush, and it's just gonna be what I use to blend those grays. So let's just mix up a medium gray. I wanna make quite a lot. And we can always test it out, and if it's too dark, we can just add more white to it. If it's too light, we can just add more black. Okay, I'm just gonna test it out. A dark area is right here. I do believe that's a perfect gray. Yep. Okay, and then I'm gonna pull some aside and pull in lots of white. Oh dear, I pulled in blue. I don't really wanna do that. I wanna kinda be consistent with the gray. There's just blue hiding underneath there. So I'm gonna do it again. I pull some white, pull some of this gray, and this will be for a little bit lighter, and then we'll move to a white. Okay, to apply this, ooh, I'm gonna start on the left side, so that leg is real skinny. I'm gonna start with my size 1 round brush with my dark gray. All right, so if you watch me, this leg is a little tricky because we have grays right here, and then we also have some grays right there. So that's only where I'm gonna apply this gray for now. There's like 2 sections that are dark, or that medium gray. I'm gonna go to my light gray now and very carefully apply this highlight to the left and below it. Ooh. Just be careful as you're doing this that you don't smudge the duckies. Just like that. See how I'm blending it in? I have to make that a little darker yet. And now I'm going to paint down, blending it into that other section of gray without losing that line right there. You see that? Try not to lose that line where it separates like the upper muscle with the heel area. So I did that, and now I'm going to go back to my darker gray, and there's this dark gray line that goes down along the left side of the foot. And then I'll just fill in this foot with this gray. And we still got to do those little toes. We got to separate them. But I'll paint them in with this gray first, and then I'll add the lines. Just be careful as you do that you don't lose the toes. See how they come down into the, see how I kind of did each toe, each section? They come down into the green background. I'm even going to bring up this lighter gray up a little further. And again, because there's like two parts that are lighter. Do you notice that? There's like two lighter sections right there. So we'll let that dry, and then when we add the white, that's when we'll add it to this part, because this is almost white, this little foot. But what we can do while we're here, I'm going to mix up a much darker gray for in between the toes. So I just pulled in some black into that gray, the first gray we applied. And let's just go around and add these to all the little toes. For this, I'm going to use my size 0 liner brush. All right, moving on, we're going to move on to that tail. That tail is pretty light, but let's still start with our gray, not this darkest gray we made, the next one. I'll start with that, just a little bit, and then pull in the lighter gray. And if you notice, I'm going to go back with this medium gray. We see a little bit on the side. It goes up just a little bit on the side there. All right, so let's continue on with this medium gray and the darkest areas around the chest. So here's a darker area. And one right here. And we don't see it because we added in the bow tie, but it's going to be under that bow tie. And right below that bow tie. You know what? I'm seeing that this climbs up the left side. All right, now let's work wet into wet here. While this is still wet, let's blend into those areas very carefully. Okay, so it's actually quite difficult to describe what I'm doing right here, but not only am I pulling in this lighter gray to cover up the white, but while I'm doing that, I'm also blending into that gray without getting rid of those sections of gray, because they are wet, so it doesn't take much to just paint over them. So be careful that you're blending and not getting rid of those gray areas, and also filling in the rest of that white. And it's really not the end of the world if you do paint over more of the gray than you want to. We can always just paint them back in. I'm going to go back with my medium gray, and I want to keep these areas dark. They got a little too light. We have some areas down here along the leg. There's just a little bit of shadow right in the left side of the front leg, and also right below on the left side of the other leg. I even see some, ooh, it's so slight, but I even see a little bit of this dark gray right here. And then I'll go in with my lighter gray and fill in the rest of the white. All right, let's touch up those darker gray areas while still doing some blending. Now, as I'm stepping back and looking at this, I think that some areas that we need are like right here. I need more of this light gray. I'm going to just paint that back in. I need to bring this shadow down a little bit further. And then also use some of this because I see just the smallest little highlight right around the foot here. And a little bump right there on that part of the leg. I can even bring this part down. All right, so let's work on that medium gray on the snout before we move into our lighter grays. I'm going to move to my size 2 filbert brush again, still working with that, working on the medium gray, and we'll fill in the left of this white marking on the face and below the nose. Now, if you notice, we have a little white outline along the lips. So it doesn't you don't necessarily have to bring that gray all the way down to that because we're just going to be outlining it with our white. And I'll stop about there with that gray because it starts to get much lighter. All right, so then I'll go back. I'm going to use my size, I always forget this, size 0 liner brush. I just mixed up some more of my light gray because I want to pull in that highlight on the lips. And it's definitely a good time to mix up more of that light gray. I'll do that now because we'll need that for this area, and then it gets to almost straight white on that area to the right of the snout. I'm going to pull in a little bit of that medium gray just to blend this area while it's wet. It was so easy. I just pulled in more of that medium gray and I just brought that down at more of an angle like that, from that line to the outer edge of that nose. And I'll probably do the same thing here. I'll just pull in more of that gray, blend that together, and go back to that light gray and paint the rest of it in. All right, once we get to the top of the head, I'm actually going to raise it up a little bit. I'm going to go over some of that dark brown a little more and create that little top of a heart, it almost looks like. And let's not stop there. I'm going to pull in more white and work down below the bow tie. And right above the bow tie. We'll add our darks right there in a moment. I'm going to need to use a smaller brush, which will come in handy when we're doing that fur. I'll actually move to my liner brush, and what I'll do is I'll just cluster lines over top, just very short lines over top this bow tie. And I can't forget this side. I cut into that ear a little too much. I'll touch that up. I'm just going to blend these two areas together. I'll pull in more of that medium gray just so it works a little bit better. And you know what? We have an area right here that we left. It's part of that leg. So I'm going to mix more of that gray with a tiny bit of black just to get it a little bit darker than the dark gray here, because that's like the same gray. We just made it a little darker for this area. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this medium gray to go over our wet paint here. And you see how I'm doing this? I'm kind of like making these curved lines from underneath the neck. And they get lighter because they're blending in with that lighter gray. And it becomes like the perfect gray. It's not too dark, not too light. But this outer edge is going to be the lightest part. So I'm leaving about 1 centimeter between the bow tie hairs and where I'm adding these lines of gray. And by the way, these are clusters of lines with gaps in between that are ever so small. I'll even go back to this just to define some of those strands of fur. I'm going in with just white actually for this. It's blending in with this gray. All right, so I'm going to make another lighter gray that's like right this gray, maybe about that gray, so that we can highlight this part of the mouth. Okay, so I'm just going to pull some of this medium gray we were using. I'm pulling in some white into it. And very carefully, if you watch me, you'll need to steady that hand for this part. We're going to outline with a very thin, equal width line around the mouth. So that's around the black area, the black gums, and the tongue, all the way to the right side of the face. It's going to go around that tongue, over top part of the bow tie, and back towards that white part. And I'm even going to just apply this right there too. And just to make that look a little more consistent, I'm also going to use this to add another highlight, another layer of highlight to the lips. Now if you look closely, there's part of the gums that's a little lighter right in there. And I'm going to take some of this medium gray and add more black to it. So it's still very dark, but not too dark. I'm going to go back with my black because I added a little too much. I'll even add a little bit of this lighter gray on that side of the mouth too. Alright, so here we go, the lightest layer for the white fur. I'm going to pick up my size 8 Arteza cat's tongue brush, and using just white, we'll pull out all those really strong highlights on the right side of Lois's face. Now if you notice, I'm not trying to fully cover up the previous layer where we had that light gray. Some areas I do fill in, but for the most part I'm doing a lot of dabs. I'm only placing the white where it counts, where it's really getting hit by the light source. This also allows those medium and slightly dark gray layers to show, so that again we can let the viewer know where that light source is located. So take your time here and follow along where I'm adding this white. Even the tail, the very end of it, will be getting some light. We just need to make sure we don't cover up too much of that. It's just going to get a little bit on the end, and then even that back leg, and definitely on the front legs. Now if you find that the layers around the chest and arms over top the white fur looks a little choppy, just go back with your medium gray and blend that into the white so that it doesn't look like such an extreme jump from dark to light. It will create that nice smooth transition. Now I still think we can go just a smidgen darker on the far left side of Lois's face. So I'm going to mix up a gray that is slightly darker, not by much, but slightly darker than the gray base we applied at the beginning. And when I did that, I allowed some of that previous gray to create almost like a border around the left side of the white fur on his snout and around the top of his nose. If you watch me, I'm going to try and match the color that we applied to the lightest part of the left ear and below the left eye. This is the area that we used raw sienna and burnt sienna. It's at the end of my painting process that I like to go around my painting and see areas that just need a little bit more pigment, layers that look a little transparent, almost like they just need another coat of that same color. Now we have a few more layers yet that we have to add just to give it a little bit more contrast, but here until the end of the tutorial, I'll also be doing a lot more touch-ups like this. I'll add my touch-ups of just raw sienna to the left of the right eye. Now I forgot to add that line that we have above the left eye. I can do that in the opposite direction on the right eye, and I'll use burnt sienna with burnt umber for that. I'll also use the same color to touch up the line on the left eye. Alright, so I'm actually going to work some more yellow ochre and white into the far right side. So that's more yellow ochre, a little bit of white. I definitely see a tint of yellow on the right side of Lois's face, so we're really going to pull that out with this color. And right along that ear fold. Not over the entire part because it gets darker on the top and bottom, but just right there. I'll bring this down along the cheekbone without going over that shadow at the bottom. And then I'll highlight that smile too. I just see the smallest amount of just raw sienna right there on the other side of the smile. Let's just strengthen that dark brown color on the right ear. I'll remix my burnt umber and black mixture. I won't fill the entire right ear, just the very bottom. Now make sure you mix up enough of this color because we'll also use it in a little bit on the left ear. And then I also can add just the smallest little bit of raw sienna right here. This should come down a little bit further down, just like this side. I'm gonna do that right there. All right, so here we go back to that dark brown of burnt umber and black. And I just want to create a real dark, strong shadow to the far left of the lightest part of the left ear. So if you just watch me, I'm not going to fill in the entire ear, just to the left of that light fold of the ear that's kind of lifting up and more at the bottom of it. Next, I'm going to go in with my black and touch up that smile, as well as the black gums coming around that tongue. I'll just pull that up a little bit more forward around that tongue. Now I notice I came down a little bit too far on the left side of the face below the left eye with my burnt sienna mixture. So I mixed up a gray to match this color just to go over that so it can be that nice smooth line. I'll also use it to touch up that tail as well. Alright creatives, so we have reached the end of Lois the Beagle's painting tutorial. Thank you again, Heyo, for letting us paint this sweet pup. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Have a blessed day. Bye!